Buyers want half a day in the house for measurements before closing. Thoughts? Closing day is mid this month. The buyers are asking to go through the house this weekend. We declined because we are out of town, and even though the house is 75 vacant, it still has stuff inside that puts me at risk if I let someone in. We're moving out totally next week and the house will be empty. Would you accommodate or not? My listing agent seems to think it's not a big deal. My realtor in my new location, who doesn't have a dog in the fight, says she would not let the buyers go through the house, and she has seen that cause issues. We're past the option period and it appraised above list. We're leaving the place just like moving out, a rental professionally cleaned, wall hanging holes covered and either whole wall painted or spot painted that you cannot tell, etc., aka nothing to hide. Escrow option period has passed. Escrow was enough to cover a month of mortgage, assuming they would lose it if they backed out at this point. What are my risks? Would you all advise it? I've allowed it both times. I've sold a house and requested one time while purchasing. I'd let them come but have my realtor there to supervise. I don't believe that having them come to measure is an issue. In order to assure that the only reason they are coming is to take measurements, I would agree, but their agent or yours should be there as well. This is to prevent them from lingering. I just used a walkthrough to get some measurements for a couple small renos we wanna do. It's really not that big of a deal and allows me a couple months to prefabricate items before we move in. Then talk to your realtor in your old location for guidance. That just sounds like buyers were trying to be kind of polite. This is the time frame we want to come in, and I do not even get the early occupy suspicion. For 6 hours? I have been on both sides of this as listing and buyer's agent. My initial inclination is yes, but not for hours. They can have a 1-hour supervised visit with their realtor and ideally yours too present, and then they must go. Lingering for hours seems like a play to talk themselves out of it or nitpick for bullshit repairs because now they see this and that damage or issue that they could not see with your chattel in the home. We used a commercial service to do the measurements. The seller didn't have a problem letting them in. They measured everything. Maybe something like that could work? If they see something they don't like, the deal may not go through. But I'd let them in, if there isn't any surprises. We needed to do such a thing to figure out if 1, some of the furniture fits so we don't bring it over, if not, and 2, get carpets. Since there is a time window, it's probably contractor or mover related. Can you send measurements? I might ask my seller for measurements as they pushed back the closing date 10 days when we went under contract. I really wanted that extra time for work done before moving in. Closed on the place a couple of months ago. We went once during escrow to get measurements. We needed to order some doors, window treatments, and furniture. So it really helped and we were glad they allowed it. They will have the house soon enough. When it's theirs, they can measure it all day and all night long. We always do a final walkthrough. That's when I tell clients to do final measurements as well. My landlords made us allow it for a new tenant, probably isn't too out of the ordinary. If you're out of the house and your agent will let them in and supervise, sure. Sometimes small kindnesses help if something small comes up later. Half a day? Hard no. Whenever buyers have been permitted to spend extra time in the home I'm selling, it always leads to a request for something additional. I agree with your agent. I have let buyers come in to measure, but it was always quite specific. They made it convenient for me, they got right to it and were in out quickly. I'd say I can accommodate on X date or dates, but I would need a shorter window like an hour. If they don't like it, well, no one dies because it takes an extra 2 weeks to get window blinds. They should use their final walkthrough for this purpose. I just measured during the inspection. Also had a contractor meet us at a house for a quote during inspection. The general rule of thumb is you don't let the buyer in to do anything prior to closing, just to avoid any conflict should they notice anything new that they didn't notice before. Personally, I see both sides of the coin. The buyers coming in to measure is harmless, and yet you are not there, and who knows what they might see that they overlooked despite you doing them right by having the place cleaned. You not being home is your best reason for saying no, but the real reason is to avoid anything from delaying the closing. Didn't your listing agent do a floor plan with measurements for the listing? It's usually pretty reasonable when done at the same time as photos, and I do it by default for my listings. No, it will give them an excuse to back out. Signed, Retired Realtor. No, they can wait till they pay for the house. It's not their house yet. What if something happens with closing? What if they do something stupid like buy a car just before closing, like so many people do, and it messes with their finances and they have to redo everything? Financing has been falling through lately. That feels like an overreach to ask for both time and purpose. I'm all for goodwill, but the house is still owned by you, and for liability reasons alone I think it's always best to limit buyer entry to showings and inspections whenever possible. Your agent should really let you be the judge and then communicate to the buyer's side in such a way that it is his or her recommendation and you've elected to take their advice, kind of a thing. I always play bad cop for my clients to take any onus off of them, as it's vital to maintain positive cooperation and feelings all around. They can't measure once they close? I'd say yes, but we want a non-refundable, non-applicable fee. Pick a number and ask for it. You want my house for a day, you pay for my house for a day. This is completely normal, and there are so many paranoid people in this sub. Geez. Check the sales contract for the word access. Buyer may be entitled to access even though it is super irritating, and most houses look like a hot mess half packed. Simple no, or they can give you $100 hour to be out of the house and both realtors present. What's in it for you? They should just wait until they close. No. They don't need that long to take measurements. They can wait until they own the house in 2 weeks. You don't need to give them a reason. It's your house. No, you can't hang out in my house with some of my stuff for 6 hours. You can measure for blinds or flooring or whatever else you want when you own it. I wouldn't let them. When I sold my house in 2021, the buyers wanted to put their new appliances in my garage to store weeks before closing. Yeah, nope. I'm not going to be responsible for that. They'll have plenty of time to measure after they complete the purchase. I've always thought this was an odd thing to request. 100. Don't do it. I allowed people in to paint and my ceiling fan mysteriously stopped working. They demanded it be replaced. Ask for what need to measure and measure for them. I wouldn't let them in unless they are supervised, either by yourself or your agent, and they get an hour, tops. You certainly don't have to, although it's kind to, but I would only consider doing them this favor on your timetable, if you want to, and with a time limit and supervision. 30 minutes should be enough. It is a final walkthrough. I did this as a buyer to validate the seller had in fact done certain things. It took about 30 minutes and I had a list of BS that still needed to be done. For one, they were still living in there and nothing was packed up. In fact, they were in their pajamas at 12 noon watching TV and it was hours before closing. Half a day is ridiculous though. I would say no. But they can pay for an attendant to be there, say $50.75 an hour. They must be all in same room at once and after signing a release form that they will be filmed to document any damage. No. Not while I'm out of town. No way. I don't see any problem with it. The agent should let them in and stay while they measure. Went back to our house multiple times to meet with various contractors. If the sellers had refused, we would have backed out because we needed quotes to be sure we could afford necessary repairs. Sure, here's a humorous and sincere reply. Sure, just make sure they don't rearrange the furniture to draw smiley faces on the carpet, smiley face. The seller of the house I purchased allowed me to come in and measure for blinds. It really helped cut down several weeks of waiting for the blinds to arrive and we were thankful. We brought a bottle of wine to closing. The sellers could have just said no and waited out.